According to a TransUnion study released in May of this year, Gen Z ages 22 to 24 are using credit cards a lot more and in different ways than their millennial counterparts did when they first began their credit card journeys. So what does this all mean? And what should Gen Z cardholders know about credit cards? I spoke to Bankrate senior industry analyst Ted Rossman. What would you say is kind of the biggest challenge with credit cards?
Credit cards charge really high interest rates. That's been especially relevant the past few years because rates have gone from bad to worse, basically. The average before the Fed started hiking in 2022 was about 16%. And it ballooned to a record high last summer. The record was 20.8%. And now it's down a little bit. It's down to about 20.3, but you're hardly going to notice that difference. It's going to save the typical borrower a couple dollars a month. So basically, high rates and high balances too. Credit card balances have been at record highs of late. The New York Fed has found that they've jumped 51% since the beginning of 2021. So it's kind of this nasty combination of higher prices for things, higher interest rates. Half of credit card holders carry debt from month to month. And that's a tough cycle to break. It's one thing if you're in the half that's paying in full, you're getting rewards, you're getting buyer protections, life is great. It's the other half that we worry about. And among those half with credit card debt, 6 out of every 10 have had their credit card debt for at least a year. So it just becomes a very persistent problem, unfortunately.
Yeah, letting that debt carry over obviously is a huge problem because it's going to get more expensive to have to maintain that debt. And of course, people around the holidays, they're trying to spend money for gifts, even if it's out of their budget. But maybe this is the season that people put the finances first.
I agree. Yeah, at Bankrate, we're big fans of paying yourself first, as in carving money out of every paycheck, putting that into a dedicated savings account. If you have credit card debt and you're in a hole, stop digging. I know it's hard because we want to have fun, we want to celebrate the holidays. I would suggest there are other ways to do that, hopefully without going deeper into credit card debt, because the National Retail Federation says the average holiday shopper spends about 900 bucks. And the who is it? TransUnion says that the average credit card balance is about $6,400. So if you throw another $900 on top of the 6,400, it just makes it that much harder. Could you buy fewer gifts this year? Maybe talk to your friends and family about, hey, could we only buy for the kids? Or could we pick one adult's name out of a hat and buy for them instead of the whole extended family? If you're a good baker, if you're a good crafter, could you make things? Could you source things secondhand? There are some corners you can cut and still have a good holiday season because you don't want to be paying off this Christmas a year from now or worse. I mean, that minimum payment scenario is brutal. If you have that average credit card balance, that's 6,400 bucks, you make minimum payments at 20%, you're in debt for 18 years and you pay more than $9,000 in interest. We want to come up with a better plan than that.
What do you advise people to do in terms of just the basic usage of their credit card? What's worthy of using it and what maybe not?
Right, it's not magic money. You do need to pay it back. And to be fair, a lot of people get into credit card debt for practical reasons. The number one cause is an unexpected emergency expense. Maybe it's a medical bill, maybe it's a car repair or a home repair. Second most common reason is day-to-day expenses. And that's been all too common the past few years with high inflation. It is true, though, that one person's need is another's want. You think about holiday gifts. Yes, we want to have a good holiday season, but if you're layering in 900 bucks in credit card debt for holiday gifts, that may not be the best choice. That's different from using a card just to, you know, buy groceries or something like that. There are some things that you can do. You could get a 0% balance transfer card, move your high cost debt over to a new card that won't charge interest for up to 21 months. The Wells Fargo Reflect has one of those deals. So does the Citi Simplicity. There are some really great nonprofit credit counseling agencies out there like Money Management International and GreenPath. They can help negotiate something like a 7 or 8% rate over 4 or 5 years. You could take on a side hustle. You could sell stuff you don't need. You could cut your expenses. There are some things you can do, but the point is, it's hard to build wealth when you're paying the credit card company 20 or 25 or 30% month after month after month.
And I'm glad you brought up the credit card company because that's kind of where I wanted to go next. Because credit card companies are also seeing how much people are spending on their credit cards. So, how do they adjust to this?
Interest rates are very high, and card companies say they have to charge high rates because some people don't pay them back. The credit card delinquency rate is at its highest point since 2011. And this showcases some of the K-shaped economy in action. Basically the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. There is a huge divide. I mentioned that half of cardholders carry debt from month to month and half don't. That's why some people say credit cards are like power tools. They could be really useful or dangerous. It's all about how you use them. And it really is so true. For those who pay in full, life is pretty good. You're getting rewards, whether it's cash back or airline miles, hotel points. Card companies kind of trip over each other, offering marketing incentives to high quality customers. The other side, unfortunately, is those who carry debt, and especially those with lower credit scores. Many are paying 25, 30%, even higher. I see some store cards in particular as high as about 35, 36%, which is really an astronomically high rate. But that's also good advice for people around the holidays. You're in a store and the cashier says, "Hey, do you want to save 20% off today's purchase by signing up for our credit card?" Be really careful about that. If you carry a balance, whatever interest you're paying is probably going to outweigh the rewards very, very quickly. So those cards can work if you pay in full and if you get a nice discount, but you have to be careful.
And that can be a challenge for a young person because obviously they may be less inclined to read the fine print sometimes and may be excited about the opportunity of having a credit card. So, what advice would you give Gen Z in terms of credit cards?
We are a bit worried about Gen Z and credit cards. TransUnion put out a really interesting report recently showing that Gen Zers have a lot more credit card debt at an earlier age than millennials did. So they looked at 22 to 24-year-olds last year, and then they looked at 22 to 24-year-olds back in 2013. And what they found is that even adjusted for inflation, 22 to 24-year-olds today have about 30% more credit card debt than their counterparts did a decade ago. And this really speaks to higher prices mostly, but also that kind of spillover effect. If you're paying more for housing and more for student loans and other things, well, there's not as much that you can throw towards your credit card debt. I like the idea of building credit early. I like that Gen Z is not shying away from credit because it's actually really great to start early and build a credit score. But the best way to do that is to use credit carefully. Make sure that you're paying on time. Make sure that you're keeping your debt low. As much as I like using credit early, maybe for some people that's not the best choice. There is an anecdotal kind of trend that's playing out on TikTok and elsewhere about cash stuffing, basically filling envelopes with cash, and that's your budgeting mechanism. So you're not going into debt. When the envelope's empty, you're done for the month in that category. Some people find that useful. Buy now, pay later is worth mentioning in this context too, because that's really popular among young people in particular. I'm talking about companies like Affirm and Afterpay and Klarna. Sometimes that works for you, but sometimes it's a slippery slope to acquiring debt because it feels like $50 here, $50 there. It's not that big of a deal, right? A lot of these are for interest-free payments over 6 weeks. The problem, though, is if you have a bunch of them running at the same time, and a lot of people do. And like I said, a credit card could be sort of magic money. Same thing with some of these plans. It incentivizes impulse buying. You're looking on a e-commerce website. They say, "Hey, do you want to split your purchase into 4 interest-free installments?" And you think, well, great. It's not $200 anymore. It's just $50. It's $50 times 4 in quick succession. You just need to be careful about that.